The day they told her she was to be married to a farmer, Alina thought it was some sort of cruel joke. She sat at the long dining table of her family's Karachi mansion, the crystal chandelier above her glittering like it was mocking her, while her father's voice echoed in the heavy silence. "You've embarrassed us for the last time," he said, his tone hard as the marble floor. "You will marry this man and leave this house by the end of the week." Alina's fingers clenched around the edge of her chair. She was 22, the eldest daughter of a wealthy textile magnate, used to private cars, shopping trips abroad, and designer clothes that strained at the seams because, unlike her willowy sisters, she was overweight. Her weight had always been the family's favorite weapon against her, an endless source of jabs, sighs, and pointed remarks about self-control. But now, her father's eyes burned with a deeper anger. Last week, Alina had publicly refused an arranged match with a banker's son, someone, respectable, in her father's eyes. She had called the man arrogant and boring in front of guests, and the gossip had spread like wildfire among their social circle. "This is your punishment," her stepmother added, a tight smile curling on her red-painted lips. "A farmer in sin. He will teach you humility. Maybe the fields will be good for you, some work, some sweat." The table rippled with low chuckles from cousins and uncles. Even her younger sister, Sana, smirked while sipping her juice. Alina's face burned, but she held her chin high. "A farmer?" she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Do you mean a man who grows wheat and sleeps in a hut?" "Exactly," her father said. "His name is Zion. He is poor, but hardworking. You will live with him, and you will not come back here." Poor, Alina thought. The word slammed into her like a slap. They wanted her gone. They wanted her humiliated. They wanted to bury her in some dusty village where no one would know her name or care about her past. 3 days later, she found herself in a worn shalwar kameez, her suitcase thrown into the back of an ancient jeep. Her stepmother didn't even bother to wave goodbye. Sana leaned in through the open door just to whisper, "Enjoy your mud hut, Baji," before laughing and walking away. The jeep took her farther and farther from the city's glass towers and neon lights, into open stretches of golden wheat fields, past wandering goats and children chasing tires with sticks. The driver, a wiry old man with sun-cracked skin, finally stopped in front of a modest, whitewashed house at the edge of a massive field. A tall man stood waiting, dressed in plain clothes, his posture straight and his eyes steady. "This is Zion," the driver said simply, unloading her suitcase. Zion stepped forward, extending a hand. His palm was calloused, his handshake firm. "Welcome," he said, his voice deep but calm. Alina looked him over. He was handsome in a rugged way, broad-shouldered, tanned from the sun, with a strong jaw and eyes the color of dark honey. But his clothes were simple, his home modest. She forced a polite nod, hiding her frustration. The first days were hard. The house had no air conditioning, only ceiling fans. There was no staff to cook or clean. Zion's elderly aunt, who lived nearby, helped with meals, but much of the work fell to Alina. The bathroom had a squat toilet. At night, the quiet was so deep it almost frightened her. She missed the hum of the city, the luxury, the instant comforts. Zion, however, never raised his voice or treated her unkindly. He was reserved, spending his days in the fields and his evenings sitting on the veranda, drinking tea while looking at the horizon. He invited her to sit with him, but she often refused, retreating to her room. She couldn't understand how he could be so content. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of her. She followed him to the fields. The expanse was breathtaking, miles and miles of swaying crops under a sky so wide it felt infinite. Workers greeted Zion with respect, some calling him Sahib, others Malik. He knew each of them by name, asking about their families, their children's schooling, their health. She noticed how they listened intently when he spoke, how they smiled in his presence. Later that evening, she asked him, "Why did they call you Malik? Doesn't that mean owner?" He looked at her for a long moment, then simply said, "Yes. I own this land." She frowned. "How much of it?" "All of it that you saw today," he replied, sipping his tea. "And more." The casual way he said it made her blink. "You mean, thousands of acres?" "Yes," he said, as if it were nothing remarkable. "The family has farmed this land for generations. It's my responsibility now." A strange heat bloomed in her chest. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a land baron. The crops, the workers, the vast fields, they were all his. She thought about the way her family had sneered at the word farmer, imagining some poor man struggling to feed himself. They had no idea. Over the next weeks, she began to see more of who Zion was. He was educated, he had studied agriculture in Lahore and returned to manage the estates. He treated his workers fairly, paying them above the market rate and funding a small school in the village. He didn't flaunt his wealth because, here, land was the true measure of power, and he had more of it than anyone for miles. He also began involving her in his work. At first, she resisted, complaining about the heat and the dust. But one morning, he handed her a small basket and asked her to help gather vegetables for lunch. She found herself laughing with the women in the fields, their chatter lively and warm. She tasted a tomato fresh from the vine, its sweetness surprising her. Slowly, she began to shed the bitterness she had carried from the city. Her clothes became looser, not just from the work, but from the fresh air and simple food. She learned to knead dough, to ride a tractor, to tell when the wheat was ready for harvest. Zion never pushed her, but he noticed the changes. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, he said quietly, "You're stronger than you think, Alina." Her heart fluttered at the sound of her name in his voice. Months passed, and her visits to the fields became daily. She began suggesting small improvements, better storage for the crops, cleaner drinking water for the workers, and Zion listened. Sometimes, they would sit on the veranda late into the night, talking about everything from city politics to the constellations above. Then came the day her father arrived. He stepped out of a sleek black SUV, dressed in his usual expensive suit, his expression smug. "I've come to see how my daughter is surviving her punishment," he said. But what he found stopped him cold. Alina greeted him in a soft blue shalwar kameez, her hair braided neatly, her eyes glowing with confidence. She led him through the property, introducing him to workers who spoke of her kindness and respect. She showed him the new water filtration system she had helped organize. And finally, she stood with Zion at the edge of a golden wheat field, the two of them a united front. "This is your son-in-law," Zion said evenly. "And this land, all of it belongs to our family now." Her father's eyes darted over the endless expanse, realization dawning. This was power, not the fragile, showy kind he clung to in the city, but the rooted, enduring kind that came from the soil itself. Alina met his gaze, her voice steady. "You thought you were sending me to be humbled. But you were sending me home." Her father left without another word. Years later, when the villagers spoke of the Malik and his wife, they called her the queen of the land. Not because of jewels or gowns, but because she had embraced the people, the fields, and the life her family had thought would break her. She had been given away as punishment, but here, among the golden acres and under the endless sky, she had found love, purpose, and a kingdom of her own.